Do you ever wonder about those little towns that you drive through that are just a dot on the map? Places that not many know much about? What made them? What broke them? What could still haunt them? Well, we're going to dive a little deeper into that. I'm your host, Doc Steph, and welcome to Rural Doc Hop. As Point Pleasant, West Virginia has such a rich history and the lore surrounding it is deep, this episode will be also in two parts. Part 5A will be the history of the town and surroundings, while Part 5B will be about the lore and paranormal. So let's get started. Point Pleasant, West Virginia is located at the confluence of the Ohio and Kanawha rivers. West Virginia routes 62 and 2 run through or around Point Pleasant, and US 35 spans the Ohio River at Point Pleasant. It is found just upriver from Gallipolis, Ohio, and just south of Middlesport and Pomeroy. Its current population sits about 4,100. The Shawnee Villages of Upper Shawnee Town was established in the area before the expeditions of settlers to the area. They would not build right at the confluence of rivers, as it was said to be a bad omen to do so the area would have been just slightly away from the actual mouth of the river. Now, as we get into some more history, please bear with me. I'm not French, so some of these names I may not be pronouncing right. In 1749, a detachment of French explorers led by Pierre-Joseph Céloron de Blainville came to the area to do peacekeeping missions with the local tribes. They buried a plaque at the confluence of the Ohio and Kanawha rivers, claiming the land and all land supplied by the river sources for France. Many of the local tribes were pro-British at the time, and this was not taken well, and they refused to leave the area. Facing encroaching militias, the Shawnee moved further inland, around 1756, to form new towns in Ohio, such as Waukatomica. In 1770, a survey party led by George Washington was sent to the Ohio Valley to survey the land granted by the Proclamation Act of 1754 to soldiers who had served the French and Indian War. This survey included 52,000 acres, or 80 square miles, in the land now including present-day Point Pleasant. It was said that George Washington may have had a part in naming Point Pleasant. He wrote about his time in the Ohio Valley. He called this area a Pleasant Point. But in 1774, there was a Camp Point Pleasant established by General Andrew Lewis, so likely this is how the name stuck. This area almost became the 14th British colony named Vandalia. The large area of this colony would have been landlocked, but filled with timber, game, and lots of area to settle. It would have included the land from Pittsburgh, down the Monongahela River to the Mason-Dixon line, east to the crest of the Allegheny Mountains, southwest to Lewisburg, and onto the Cumberland Gap. The northern border would have been the Ohio River. The capital of this large colony was set to be Point Pleasant. Right before this could be signed by the English king for approval, the Boston Tea Party happened, and it went by the wayside. The Battle of Point Pleasant happened in October of 1774. This pitted Virginians, led by Andrew Lewis, against Shawnee and Mingo Native Americans, led by Chief Cornstalk. This was the culminating battle of Lord Dunmore's War. Lord Dunmore was the last colonial governor of Virginia, and he assembled two armies to attack the Shawnee villages in Ohio. The first army of approximately 1,000 men was led by Dunmore himself and assembled at Fort Dunmore in present-day Pittsburgh. The second army of 1,000 men was led by Andrew Lewis and assembled in Camp Union, now present-day Lewisburg. They followed the Kanawha River to Point Pleasant, arriving October 6, 1774. The goal of these two armies was to meet at the mouth of the Hocking River and proceed north up the river, attacking settlements of Native Americans as they went. The Shawnee caught word of the plan, and Chief Cornstalk decided to catch the lower army off guard to try to prevent them from raiding further north. Over 900 Native American warriors crossed the Ohio River, hoping to catch the soldiers before they awoke the next morning. Unfortunately for them, 2 Virginian soldiers had awoken early to go hunt, saw them, and sounded the alarm. 2 columns of men were sent into battle the warriors, and both musket fire and hand-to-hand combat broke out. Another flank of soldiers took the high ground, and the Shawnee retreated, dumping their dead into the river. Chief Cornstalk signed an armistice with Dunmore at Camp Charlotte near Shawneetown immediately following this. Fort Blair stood at the apex of the ground just north of the mouth of the Kanawha River and was built in October of 1774 by Captain William Purcell. He abandoned the fort in June of 1775 after those who were wounded in the Battle of Point Pleasant had recovered. The garrison of troops was removed by Dunmore, and the Native Americans burnt this down shortly after troops had left. Captain Matthew Arbuckle was sent to Point Pleasant from Fort Pitt by General Hand in 1776 to build another fort, Fort Randolph. The garrison held approximately 150 men and would be a stronghold if the skirmishes of the Revolutionary War made their way to the area. In 1777, Chief Cornstalk, as well as his son and another warrior, Red Hawk, came to the fort to warn the American garrison that their tribes were being pressured by British to join the war against the Americans. A nearby soldier had recently been killed by a band of hostile Native Americans, and the militiamen detained Cornstalk and murdered them in their holding room. Folklore states that on his dying breath, he cursed the area and that the curse would last for generations, bringing tragedy and disaster to the white settlers and their descendants. In May of 1778, 200 Native Americans appeared at the fort demanding its surrender due to the death of Chief Cornstalk. When the demands were not met, they attacked the fort for over a week. When they did not make headway in taking the fort, they took the fort's cattle and went north towards another settlement. The fort was evacuated in 1779 and burnt quickly after by the natives. In 1781, settlers had established homes in the Point Pleasant area, and by 1794, the General Assembly of Virginia chartered the town of Point Pleasant. Daniel Boone was a resident of Point Pleasant in 1789 when he and his family settled after losing his Kentucky land claims due to the surveying laws. He ran a local trading post, helped with surveying, and was a lieutenant colonel of the Kanawha militia. From there, he served as the Kanawha County in the Virginia Assembly in 1791. Mad Ann Bailey also made her home in Point Pleasant. She lost her husband in the Battle of Point Pleasant and swore to avenge her husband's death. She taught herself how to shoot and became a scout, roaming the West Virginia frontier and taking messages between forts. She remarried in 1785. She was often credited with carrying gunpowder from Louisburg to Fort Lee in Charleston during a siege. She was said to have drove livestock from the Shenandoah Valley to the Kanawha Valley and later carried mail from Staunton to Gallipolis. So what was medicine like during the 1700s in colonial America? For many, a physician would not have been easy to come by, especially in rural areas like the Northwest Territory. Women were typically responsible for medical care within the family, but rarely did they apprentice with a physician, which was needed to practice medicine at the time. Herbal remedies were passed down through generations and included use of herbal poultices and emetics. Herbs such as lavender, rosemary, wormwood, sage, foxglove, mint, and many more were used to help cure ailments from headaches and swelling to stomach pains. At the time, malaria, yellow fever, and typhus would have been thought to come from noxious vapors. Others believed all illness was an imbalance of the four humors of the body. These included blood, yellow bile, black bile, and phlegm. The way to cure would be to purge some of these humors by using bloodletting, teas that could cause vomiting, or other medications that would cause the expulsion of fluids from one under the other. During the Revolutionary War, it is said that more soldiers died of disease and infection than on the battlefield. Between musket balls having to be removed with no anesthesia and crude instruments and amputations done on the battlefield, many were left with permanent scars. Smallpox was also running rampant during this time frame, and inoculation was in its infancy. In order to inoculate a person for smallpox, a cut was made on a healing person's smallpox sore. A thread was passed through the area and then passed through a similar cut on a healthy person. The recipient would get sick, but not as badly if they had caught it themselves, and would then have immunity for further infection. If not quarantined during that time frame, they could spread smallpox to others, though. In February of 1777, after multiple outbreaks of smallpox within the Continental Army, General George Washington ordered all troops to be inoculated. Between the inoculations and quick quarantine practices, smallpox was able to be controlled much better within the military. German families from the Shenandoah Valley settled in this area, bringing with them their hard-working attitudes, and they broke ground to farm and cut timber. More settlers followed, and the area began to grow. In the 19th century, many trades emerged, but shipbuilding became one of the largest industries for the area due to its abundant timber. Sand and gravel quarries also became needed for larger projects. Coal mines were also established. Industry continued to grow into the 1900s, and products from the region included polyester, TNT, synthetic lubricants, metal alloys, iron castings, and ceramic insulators. The Marietta Manufacturing Company was chartered in 1915 on 42 acres of land. It gained contracts with the government in World War I and then added a boiler shop and shipyard. It became one of the largest builders of complete rivercraft in the United States. The plant then mobilized in World War II, making net tenders, Army mine planters, and Army landing tugs. Many women worked in the factory as men went off to serve the country overseas. They earned the Army-Navy E Award for ranking in the top 3% of war production plants in the nation. After the World Wars, they moved on to making barges, coal mining machines, survey ships, and before its closing, would repair boats and barges. The West Virginia Ordnance Works, now known as the TNT area, sat on 8,323 acres of land and was opened in 1943. It was built in 1942 by the Army Corps of Engineers and completed in its entirety in September of 1943. It manufactured TNT for World War II until 1945 when it was abandoned. A total of 3,500 workers manned the plant, which turned out between 500,000 and 720,000 pounds of TNT daily, which was used in munitions and explosives for the war effort. The storage igloos can still be seen, covered in dirt and in a grid pattern, which was used to reduce the risk of multiple explosions if one caught fire. By November of 1949, all plumbing and production equipment had been removed except contaminated sewer lines. The burning grounds and the red and yellow water reservoirs, as well as the sewer lines that fed from them, were fenced and blocked off. Many structures were salvaged or disposed of when it was abandoned, and the TNT that was stored in particularly underground bunkers or igloos was at least mostly remediated. But with a large amount of this in such a large area, would it really be any wonder if some remained? This would be realized in 2010 when one bunker exploded after 20,000 pounds of unstable material was found within it. Will this be the last such thing to happen in the TNT area? Likely not. The present-day TNT area has largely been handed over to the state as a wildlife area, McClintock Wildlife Management Area, after remediation of the Superfund site was completed. Igloos still stand, as well as the ruins of the old North Powerhouse. Various concrete foundations and footings are also seen in the area. The area is ripe with paths to walk for those who wish to take in the area. Many abandoned tunnels also run under the area, likely having held parts of the sewer structures. They are marked with graffiti and half covered in water. Much of the graffiti carries warnings that the local cryptid Mothman resides there. On December 15, 1967, small Point Pleasant would forever be changed. The Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant with Ohio would crash into the river, taking a packed deck of cars with it. Originally opened in 1928, it was a 2-lane, 1,760-foot-long I-bar suspension bridge, which took 1 year to finish. Instead of using traditional wire cables, a cheaper bid for an I-bar design won. not only for cost, but for clout, as it would be one of the first such bridges built with this structure in the United States. Unfortunately, no one estimated the changes that would occur over the next 40 years. The average weight of a car increased from 1,500 pounds to over 3,000 pounds, and traffic increased substantially as more commuted further than a simple walk to work. Up to 4,000 cars a day would cross the bridge in the 1960s. Many residents would complain of the sway of the bridge, which was most pronounced if you ended up stuck in the middle. Inspections happened regularly, and in 1965, repairs of $30,000 were completed. However, without taking apart the eye bars, there was no way to see that one was damaged. At 5 p.m. on December 15, 1967, a light was malfunctioning, leading to a backup of vehicles on the Silver Bridge. First, one side broke, swinging the bridge to the opposite direction and sending half the cars into the river. Then the other side broke, sending the rest of the cars and the bridge itself into the river below. 31 vehicles and 64 people plunged into the ice-cold Ohio River. Bridge material crushed many of the cars instantly. 46 people lost their lives that day. Boats of all kinds came to the river to try to help look for those who survived. 50-ton cranes were used to move debris, and dredges were used to find those who had succumbed to the collapse. Charlene Wood, by all accounts, should have been on that bridge, but followed her gut, and when she felt it shudder, she threw her car in reverse. She made it to the cement on-ramp barely in time. She was helped out of her teetering vehicle and was in shock. She was pregnant at the time, and her gut instinct not only saved herself, but the life of her unborn child. Now we're going to go into the legend of Mothman, and the thought that he may be a harbinger of disaster or a warning of upcoming doom later on. But just as a note, many believe they saw him flying near the bridge or even perched on top of the bridge the days leading to the collapse. Was he trying to warn of the imminent collapse? We will never know. Present-day Point Pleasant has undergone a bit of a cultural shift in the last couple of decades. Many stores now revolve around the Mothman legend. These include a Mothman museum, an ice cream shop, a general store, and a local pizza shop. An artisan has made a statue of Mothman that sits on the median of 4th Street, and a marker describing the cryptid is found there as well. It's a great place to start your adventure. The world's only Mothman museum is found near this famous statue. The museum has a ton of Mothman eyewitness accounts, including handwritten accounts, information and news clippings from the time frame, as well as info about the Silver Bridge collapse. There are even props from the 2002 movie, The Mothman Prophecies. The gift shop has all sorts of cryptid merchandise. The museum itself is very affordable, and you can even do a virtual visit on their website. I've personally been there twice, once just for fun and once recently to dive a little deeper in information for this podcast. Next door is the Point Pleasant Trading Company, owned by the same individuals that own the museum. Here you find more cryptid-themed items from shirts to bags and my favorite, patches. You can also find retro sodas, candy, and kids' toys. There are quite a few locally made items as well. Upstairs you'll find a Mothman-themed blacklight glow putt, which has really good reviews. If you go to the other side of the street of the Mothman statue, you'll find What's the Scoop ice cream shop. They not only have Mothman-themed ice cream treats, but recently started releasing a whole line of ice cream treats based on cryptids from Bigfoot to the Flatwoods Monster. A short drive down the road is Village Pizza Inn, which has all sorts of good food and pizza, but what brought us twice was the Mothman Pizza. It's a large pizza with toppings arranged to look like the infamous Mothman. They will even bring it to the table so you can get a picture with it before they cut it. As anyone with kids know, pizza is always a hit. And the pizza is just plain good. Another fun thing to do there is when you pay, you can get a label and pin to pin your location on the large U.S. map of where you visited from. Back in downtown, there are all sorts of small shops to visit, coffee shops, t-shirt stores, and antique shops. You can also visit the old TNT area, the McClintock Wildlife Area. Just be careful not to go into areas that are restricted or locked bunkers, and keep an eye out for Mothman. The annual Mothman Festival happens in September each year in downtown Point Pleasant. This includes lots of good food, cryptid merchandise, live entertainment, and the chance to bump into some of the top names in cryptid lore. Now that this has gotten pretty long and there's still a lot to cover, we'll take a break and come back with episode 5B, Mothman, Men in Black, and Hauntings of Point Pleasant. So what do you think? Would you visit and learn more about a small dot on the map? Would you look into more history of an unknown small town? The era it was founded in and thrived, and what caused it to decay over time? Or would you even dare to hunt for the ghosts that haunt the area? A special thanks to the world's only Mothman Museum for having such an array of information and interesting things to look at, as well as Village Pizza Inn for your delicious Mothman pizza. I look forward to visiting Point Pleasant again. Stay tuned to World Doc Hop for more small town history and lore. Thank you for lending your ear. I'm Doc Steph, signing off for now.